Hello, this section presents aviation safety in the AVM101. Aviation safety look at the theory, investigation and categorization of flight failures and the prevention of such failures through regulation, education and training. When we look at flight safety, it's important to differentiate between accidents and incidents. The accident is something serious, either for the person or the aircraft or both, and the incident is something which is not serious. Is air travel safer than other modes of transport? Well, it depends how we measure it. For instance, if we look at death passengers per billion journeys, then air appears at the 7th position. If we look at death passengers per billion hours of transportation, then air appears on the 3rd position. And when we look at death per billion kilometers, so the length transported, then air is the clear winner in safety. Air transportation was not very safe in the early stages. However, different milestones have increased the safety of aviation. For instance, in the 20s, the lights of the aircraft were designed. In the 30s, the PAPI, or the lights which approach the airport, were introduced. In the late 30s, the instrument landing system, which is an angle which indicates the aircraft to reach the runway. In the late 40s, DMEA, or distant measuring equipment, which calculate distance from the aircraft to certain locations. In the 60s, the VOR was introduced, which gives you an indication about the grade of flying. And more recently, other innovations have been introduced to increase safety, such as GPS. More recent, there are organizations which aim to increase the safety standards, such as the Commercial Aviation Team in the US, created in the 98 to reduce up to 80% the accidents in 10 years. And now, again, with 50% decrease for the next 15 years. In Europe, there are also initiatives to increase safety, and in particular, we have the AESA, which is the European Aviation Safety Agency, in charge of increase the standards of safety in Europe. We have also FAA in the US, who is an agency in charge to implement directives and actions for the airlines which aim to improve potential risk of parts of an aircraft. This can be through an engineering order with less priority than a major open item, which has to be done as soon as possible, and indicating what is the minimum equipment list of an aircraft. Aviation safety can be affected by foreign object debris, for instance, when an item is left on the aircraft during repair. Aviation safety can be affected by misleading information or lack of information. For instance, when a printed document which is shown to the pilot and is not correct, or an instrument which is given the wrong indication. Or could be also because the tower of control gives the wrong information. Safety can be affected by the weather, or for instance, by lighting, which could affect the communication as well as the fuselage of the aircraft. The weather can bring a lot of ice and snow, and the ice is very dangerous, especially on the wind, because it could affect the lift of the aircraft. Safety can be affected for mechanical reasons. One example is one engine failure, which could be due for a foreign object getting into the engine and making it not working. Could be also a structure failure due to fatigue, for instance. Another area of aviation safety is during the flight. For instance, the aircraft could be stalling, which means that the angle of attack is too high and the lift is being lost. Or could be during the flight of a fire, which normally is provoked during the for wiring problems. Birds is another case of safety hazards. For instance, a bird strike, which is one of those birds going into the engine, provoking a failure. Being the most dangerous bird strike during takeoff and landing. Safety is important also during the runway maneuvers at the airport. For instance, one aircraft could be going out of a runway. Also, it could overrun the end of the runway. In other occasions, when the aircraft is going to land into the runway, find something which is somewhere in the runway. Or even the runway confusion in which take a taxiway instead of a runway. A proper ground operation can increase the safety as well. One example could be by avoiding collision with other aircraft on the airport facilities. Also by ensuring a safe parking together with the docking of the aircraft. Or provisioning adequate lights or signs to guide the aircraft. Cargo and baggage while loading and offloading can be a source of danger if not properly handled. And in airports with very low temperature where the icing is necessary, these activities should be carefully done in order to avoid dangers. Another source of danger could be electronic interfaces, as for instance the ones of the mobile phones during landing and taking off. Volcanic ash could be also a source of danger as it damaged the engine. Terrorist action could be another source, like the one, for instance, of September 11 in the US in 2001. Or deliberate aircrew actions, sometimes in those flights that you see here on this list. In other cases, when an aircraft approaches a safety zone without the proper indication, military actions taking place for those aircraft. If we look at the different phases of flight, which of those do you think are the most dangerous? Have you thought about it? Well, these are the statistics. Basically, landing is the most dangerous phase of flight, with 36% of the incidents, following by takeoff. So landing and takeoff together account for more than 50%. When we look at the cause of accidents, as we see on the graph, if we see that the age represents human error, we see that most of the accidents are a consequence of human errors. The Jet Airliner Cruise Data Evaluation Center was founded in 1989 by two Germans and looks at different and all the accidents that happens worldwide. They also create a ranking about the safest airlines in the world. If we look at the ranking in 2013, Air New Zealand, for instance, appears as the safest airline in the world. The international organization ICAO also monitors and publishes reports regarding safety. And we can see the trends on these graphs, which have been somehow decreasing over the last few years. If we look at geographical regions, Africa and Asia are the world regions with the highest number of fatalities in 2012. And this is the end of this video. Thank you very much for listening.